Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about conducting scientific research as a student, and I'm going to focus on the components of the project reports. And my presentation will have the following outline. First, I'm going to talk about the main components of the project reports. Then, I'm going to talk about the other components of the project reports. Then, I'm going to talk about the need to be clear and brief in your writing of the project reports. Then I'll summarize the presentation. So let's get started. Usually the research project report that you are going to write as part of your final year project work, has some standard components in it which must be present. And these standard components must be there regardless of the kind of institution that you are in, because across the various tertiary institutions that actually write project report, these are things that must be there. And these components actually include the background information. You have your literature review, the methodology, results, discussions, conclusion, recommendations, and references. So for instance, your background information just gives a general idea, as to a broad picture of what your project work or research is all about. Your literature review actually discusses what other people have done in relation to what you want to do, and how that one fits into what you want to do, and what were some of the problems that they encountered, the gaps, so that your work, can have a place to fit and actually make a meaningful contribution to knowledge. And your methodology would actually talk about the processes that you went through and how you actually did the work. Then the results, would actually talk about your results, and discussions actually would actually talk about the kind of results that you have, and the analysis of your results, and what meaning or what knowledge, can actually come out of your results. Then the conclusion is going to summarize the whole work that you've done. Then there'll be some recommendations that will come out of what you've done, so that somebody else, who wants to continue the work can actually pick up from the recommendations and continue. Then there will also be references, which would typically comprise of other reports, materials, books that you read, or that you drew information from that helped you to actually do your project work. And the above components, that have to be in a report is usually arranged, or organized into various chapters, in the report. And typically, in most cases, you may have like 5 chapters. Sometimes you may have more, either 6. But it's usually around 5 chapters. For the project reports. And as a research student, your main contribution to knowledge, would actually be where the methodology is, the results, the discussions, your conclusions, and then your recommendation, because these are the components of the work where your work actually fits, what you have actually done, the knowledge that you have given out, what you have to contribute to the scientific community. These are the places where this knowledge would actually be. So it is important that as a student you understand the things, that you are supposed to write, under each section or under each chapter of your work, or under each component. And knowledge of what you're supposed to write, you can easily get, by looking at previous project reports in your institution, by consulting your supervisor, by even consulting other senior colleagues, who have already been through the process. And when you do this, it can give you some ideas as to how to organize your own and what are kind of things that you're supposed to write. So typically, apart from the main components that I've discussed before, there are some other components also which will be present in your project report, which will complement the others in the project reports. And some of these components, actually may come before your first chapter, and some also may come, after your last chapter. And usually the ones that come before your first chapter include things like the title page, the certification or declaration. You have something like acknowledgement, dedication, abstract, table of contents, list of figures, list of tables. So let me pick these one after the other, and let me talk about what is expected to be written. So if you take the title page, for instance, title page, you're supposed to write the main title of the research, your name, and maybe the name of your institution. or your department. On a certification declaration page, basically you make a statement there, that says that your work is original, you did it yourself, and that you didn't just go and copy it from somewhere. And most of the time, even after this particular statement, you sign, your supervisors will also sign. And depending on the kind of institution that you are, your head of department may also need to sign, to verify that indeed you did the work yourself. It's not somebody's work that you want to copy. It is your own work. And then under the acknowledgement, here you are supposed to write and acknowledge the people or other people who are not directly involved in the project work, but whose efforts actually help you to accomplish or finish the project work. So you can actually mention names over there, acknowledge them, for the efforts and the support they gave you in the work. And then for the dedication also, at the dedication, you are supposed to write a very brief statement as to who or what institution you've dedicated your work to. Most of the time, people dedicate this. And dedication, people actually may dedicate their work to maybe their parents, their siblings, their family members, or some institution, that actually help them, in cash or kind to actually accomplish the project work. Under your abstract, you are required to actually give a grand summary of your project work, what the project work entails, from a distance, a snapshot, so that if anyone picks the abstract and actually reads, typically abstract is supposed to be just one page or less than one page. If anyone picks it and reads it, the person has a broad picture of what you have done in the work, and the kind of results that you have, and the implications of the results, to the global scientific community. All this information must be compressed and condensed into your abstract. Then you have table content, which would actually describe the various main chapters and what the sections or how you organize the work, the step-by-step process by which you organize the work, the divisions into the various sections. This information will be in a table of content and the pages where each section or each chapter actually is. Then you have something like a list of figures, which will give a list of all the figures that were in your project report, and a list of tables also the same. The list of tables, all the tables in your project report. And usually, at the end of the report, you may also have an appendix, which is presented at the end of the report, which actually has information also related to the work, but which may not necessarily be information that is required to be presented inside the work, like maybe some detailed process that you went through to actually do some calculations, for some variables, Those aspects of the work may not actually have room or space inside the main report. In the main report, you may actually present just a result or whatever it is. But a detailed step, the step by step, you may want to describe that in an appendix, because one of the main things of scientific research is that once you do your research and you write your report, the processes that you follow in doing your report must be repeatable, which means that if somebody comes to pick your project report and reads your project report, the person must be able to go through the same processes that you went through and come to the same conclusions, basically. So the appendix is a great place, for actually expanding information that is not directly related to the work, but that also contributed to the work. You may have some other figures, some tables, extra tables that you want to present. All these things can fit, into the appendix at the end of the report. The aforementioned components, together with the various chapters that you are going to write, make up the full project report. So the full project report is the complete report that actually has all the components that I've described above. And as a research student, it is important that you understand the kind of information that you need to write under each section, the kind of information you need to write under each component, the kind of information you need to write under each chapter. Because once you understand this, the writing process becomes much easier. But usually, if you don't understand what you're supposed to write, then you will struggle. And you need to understand also that the work actually is supposed to be done in a certain time frame. So if you're struggling, you're unable to make progress, that is also eating up into the time, and if you're not very careful, the time will come up. And then at the end of the day, or at the end of the duration, you still haven't finished. That will not be a good thing. So usually it's very important that once you are writing your project report, you write it in a very simple way, in such a way that it is very easy to read and understand. Anyone who knows how to read, anyone who knows how to think and read must be able to pick up your project work, read and basically understand what it is that you have actually written inside. And the grammatical expressions that you use in a report must be very simple, must be clear, they must be brief, and they must be straight to the point. Under no circumstances should you use words that are difficult to understand. When you do that, that will not be good for a report. Your report must be simple enough that anyone who knows how to read must be able to pick it up and have a basic understanding of what you have done inside. And under no circumstance must you personalize the things you are writing in a project report. You should never write about your personal feelings or personal emotional feelings inside a project report. Things like, let's say for instance, if you're describing your method, how you went through a certain process, you're supposed to go straight to the point. We picked this particular component, we added this particular component with it, and we went through process A, B, and C, finished. But things like, we went to search for this component to buy, how we suffered. We had to go through town, go through several problems before we were able to get it. These kinds of ramblings or things or emotional discussions, have no place in a scientific project report. So your project report must not, under any circumstance, contain any of these emotional things. You must be brief, straight to the point, you must be as clear as possible. And your supervisor has more experience, so your supervisor is there as a resource to guide you through the process, so that once you get to a point when you're stuck, you're confused, or there's something you don't fully understand, your supervisor is there to actually assist you, to help you, so you can actually go through the project reports. And then, because your supervisor is a senior person, he has gone through the process and done what you've already done, or something similar to what you have done. So it's much easier that he can actually direct you and guide you. So never be afraid, or be concerned or worried about going to your supervisor to seek for assistance. And at the end, what you write in your report, must be able to stand the test of time, because you are writing a report that will probably go into some library or some archives or something like that, and it's going to be there for several years to come. So the information you write inside, what you put inside, must be able to stand the test of time, so that even long after you finished your work and departed from the institution, whatever it is, anyone must be able to pick up your work and still read. Your work must still be able to be scientifically relevant. Basically, that's what it is. So let's summarize everything. The project report that you're supposed to write has some standard components which must be present regardless of the institution that you are in. So these standard components, must be there, and they form the core or the centerpiece of the project work. And these components are things like the background information, your literature review, your methodology, your results, your discussions, your conclusions, your recommendations, and your references. And the other components which add up to the above components I've mentioned, to make up the full project reports. And as a research student, it is important that when you are writing your project report, that you write clearly, write briefly, and you go straight to the point. Avoid using very difficult words, grammar, that are difficult to understand, and also avoid using personal, emotional expressions. And at the end, the content of your project report must be able to stand the test of time, because your project report will go into a booklet which would actually be deposited in a library somewhere. So long after you are gone, anyone at all should be able to go pick up your work, read your work, and what is in your work must still be scientifically relevant. So it is very, very important that what you put in the project report must be able to stand the test of time. So at this point, I'd like to thank you very much for making the time to watch this presentation. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.